Every summer afternoon, the aroma of sizzling barbecue drifts through our quiet suburb, a scent that promises relaxation and community spirit. But one fateful day, that simple joy turned into a battle of authority. When our overzealous HOA decided that my brother's backyard grill was disrupting the neighborhood, they called the cops. What they didn't know was that my brother isn't just any resident. He's a police captain. I'm Alex Carter, and while I usually work behind the scenes in covert operations, today my family's honor is on the line. It all began on a bright Saturday when I received a panicked call from home. My brother, Captain Michael Carter, was calmly flipping burgers in our backyard, enjoying a well-earned day off. Suddenly, the tranquility was shattered by the blare of sirens and the arrival of uniformed officers at our door. The HOA, led by a stern-faced board member with little regard for common sense, had claimed our grilling was in violation of neighborhood aesthetics. Stunned yet composed, Michael maintained his calm as the situation escalated. With his police credentials tucked away, no one had anticipated that the very man they were about to arrest was an authority figure himself. As the cops prepared to detain him, I knew that behind this absurd order lay a deep-seated pattern of petty harassment by our HOA, a system bent on controlling every aspect of our lives. Today I'm going to share the story of how an unjust call to the cops turned into a showdown between bureaucratic tyranny and the unyielding spirit of a true law enforcer. Get ready for a tale of resilience, authority, and a community uniting against overreach. Our neighborhood is picture perfect: lush lawns, pristine sidewalks, and a reputation for order. Yet beneath this polished exterior lies an HOA that rules with an iron fist. At the helm is Ms. Karen Marini, a no-nonsense enforcer who sees any deviation from her vision as an act of rebellion. On that fateful day, Michael Carter, my older brother and a dedicated police captain, was hosting a casual family cookout in his spacious backyard. The grill was fired up. The aroma of marinated ribs filled the air, and neighbors gathered to share laughs and stories. For Michael, grilling was more than a pastime. It was a way to bond with the community and unwind from the weight of duty. Without warning, a harsh knock at the door signaled that something was amiss. A stern-faced HOA representative, clipboard in hand, announced that the HOA had reported excessive grilling activity and that local law enforcement was en route to enforce compliance. Shock and confusion rippled through the crowd. How could a simple backyard cookout be deemed a violation? Michael, ever the epitome of calm, greeted the unexpected disruption with measured courtesy. Even as he explained that his grilling area was fully compliant with local regulations, the representative's eyes narrowed. Meanwhile, residents whispered among themselves, torn between loyalty to a beloved community tradition and fear of the HOA's notorious retribution. I stood at the edge of the gathering, recording every detail on my hidden device, knowing that what was unfolding was not just a misunderstanding, but part of a larger pattern of petty abuse. I resolved then that our next steps would be crucial in exposing the HOA's overreach. After the commotion died down, I retreated to our home office to review the footage and notes from the incident. Every moment, the hurried steps of the HOA rep, the tense exchanges, even the puzzled looks of our neighbors, painted a picture of systematic overreach. It wasn't just about grilling. It was about enforcing arbitrary rules to intimidate residents. While analyzing the incident, I discovered that the HOA had recently amended its regulations to include unauthorized outdoor cooking as a violation. Oddly, this rule had been pushed through without any neighborhood vote. My suspicions grew. Was this yet another tactic by Karen Marini to exert control over our community? I reached out to a few neighbors who'd experienced similar harassment. Mrs. Johnson recalled a previous incident where her flower bed was restructured by the HOA for non-compliance, and Mr. Thompson admitted that his patio lights had been targeted last summer. The pattern was clear. No one was safe from the HOA's micromanagement. Meanwhile, Michael remained unfazed. Even as officers prepared to arrest him for disturbing the peace, he calmly insisted on his rights, flash of his badge subtly hidden beneath his shirt. His steady demeanor was a stark contrast to the panic brewing around him. With mounting evidence and testimonies, I began compiling a dossier that would expose not only this unjust arrest attempt, but also the broader abuse of power by the HOA. The stakes were higher than ever, and I knew that every piece of evidence would be crucial in turning the tide against an institution that had bullied our community for far too long. Late that evening, while poring over the newly amended HOA regulations, I stumbled upon a startling detail. The rule against unauthorized outdoor cooking had been inserted during a closed meeting with minimal resident input. Even more damning were internal memos hinting at financial incentives tied to levying fines for such violations. It appeared that the HOA was using the pretext of community standards to generate extra revenue and to intimidate residents into conformity. I cross-referenced the timeline with other suspicious rule changes and discovered that several residents had been targeted for minor infractions in the weeks leading up to the grilling incident. This was no isolated overreaction. It was part of a calculated plan to tighten the board's grip on the neighborhood. The evidence made it clear. The HOA's actions were orchestrated to create an atmosphere of fear and to funnel money from residents under the guise of protecting community values. In Michael's case, his grilling was simply a casualty of this broader scheme. The irony was undeniable. While the board aggressively pursued trivial infractions, they had no idea they were targeting a man whose very profession was to uphold the law. Armed with this explosive discovery, I prepared to expose the HOA's hidden agenda. The next step was to rally the community and confront the board with the truth. The next morning, whispers turned into open outrage. At an impromptu neighborhood meeting in a local park, residents gathered to discuss the latest incident. Voices that had been hushed in fear now rose in unison as neighbors shared similar stories of arbitrary fines and overzealous enforcement. Among the crowd, Mrs. Johnson and Mr. Thompson recounted their own experiences, and a young couple revealed how their outdoor family dinner had been disrupted by the HOA's inspectors. The collective anger was palpable. I distributed copies of the internal memos and the revised regulation, ensuring everyone saw the evidence of manipulation. Despite the tension, Michael remained the picture of composure. Even as officers questioned him at his home, he maintained his dignity, calmly asserting his rights and flashing a hint of his badge whenever needed. His quiet strength inspired the gathering, fueling a determination to fight back. I coordinated a plan with trusted residents, organizing a series of meetings, gathering further documentation, and preparing to confront the HOA head-on. With every shared story and piece of evidence, the community's resolve solidified. We were no longer just victims of petty rule enforcement. We had become a united front against an institution that exploited every loophole to maintain its power. This newfound solidarity would be the cornerstone of our battle, setting the stage for decisive action against the HOA's corrupt practices. As the community began to mobilize, additional layers of the HOA's misconduct emerged. One neighbor, Mr. Alvarez, disclosed that his permit for a backyard garden had been inexplicably revoked after he questioned the board's decisions. Meanwhile, a local contractor whispered about inflated fees and kickbacks between HOA board members and service providers, a scandal that had quietly plagued several nearby developments. These subplots revealed that the grilling incident was merely the tip of the iceberg. The HOA's regime was a web of arbitrary rule changes, financial corruption, and selective enforcement that targeted residents with the weakest voices. Each new testimony painted a picture of an organization designed not to protect community standards, but to enrich itself at the expense of our rights. Amid these revelations, Michael's personal struggle grew more poignant. His role as a police captain meant that he understood the weight of authority and the heavy burden when that authority was misused. Balancing his duty to serve and the need to stand up for his family created an emotional dilemma that resonated deeply with all of us. I began consolidating these subplots into our collective dossier, determined that a comprehensive account of the HOA's abuses would force public scrutiny and legal intervention. The stakes were higher now, and every piece of evidence we gathered would be crucial in dismantling the corrupt system that had tormented our neighborhood for too long. As the pressure mounted, personal conflicts and emotional dilemmas came to the forefront. At a community forum held late one night in a dimly lit community hall, residents shared tearful accounts of how the HOA's petty rules had disrupted their lives. One elderly woman recounted how she'd been forced to tear up her beloved flower arrangements, while a single father described the financial strain of endless fines. Michael, though a symbol of unwavering authority, was visibly affected by the injustice inflicted upon him and our family. In a private conversation, he admitted that being targeted by the very organization meant to enforce law and order, was a bitter irony. A conflict that struck at the heart of his identity as a protector. His calm exterior belied the inner turmoil of having to defend not just his right to grill, but the very dignity of his service and his family's traditions. I too felt the weight of responsibility. Every interaction with a fearful neighbor, every hushed confession of past abuses, deepened my resolve. My dual life, as an undercover CIA operative and as a concerned brother, demanded that I remain composed, even as the emotional stakes soared. The burden of maintaining secrecy while rallying a community was enormous, yet every smile of relief and nod of solidarity reaffirmed that our fight was just. These emotionally charged exchanges underscored the human cost of the HOA's overreach. They reminded us all that our struggle was not merely bureaucratic, it was a battle for dignity, justice, and the right to live freely. Late one evening, as the HOA prepared for an emergency board meeting, I intercepted a heated conversation between a board member and a local contractor. Their discussion hinted at plans for even stricter regulations that would limit outdoor gatherings and caution effectively any form of community celebration. This wasn't just about grilling, it was about quashing any sign of independent living that didn't fit the board's narrow vision. News of this potential crackdown sent ripples through our community. A respected local journalist began hinting at an investigative report that could expose a pattern of intimidation and corruption across multiple neighborhoods managed by the same HOA group. The stakes escalated rapidly, and every new detail added another layer of urgency to our cause. I coordinated with a few trusted residents to record the upcoming board meeting. Hidden cameras and discreet audio devices were set up around the HOA office to capture every incriminating word. The tension was palpable as we prepared to confront the board's next move, a move that could either cement their tyranny or expose their deepest secrets. Meanwhile, Michael's colleagues in the police force, unaware of his dual identity, began murmuring about the irony of arresting a man who embodied law and order. The converging pressures from the community, the media, and within the board itself signaled that the final confrontation was nearing. Every piece of evidence, every whispered rumor, and every act of defiance was building toward a moment when the HOA's grip on our lives would finally snap. The battle lines were drawn, and failure was not an option. In the days following the intercepted call, the network of resistance within our neighborhood grew stronger. I discovered that several residents had formed an underground alliance to document every instance of HOA overreach. Ms. Langley, Mr. Alvarez, and even a few younger tech-savvy neighbors contributed by sharing photos and video clips from their smartphones. During a clandestine meeting at a local cafe, these residents exchanged not only evidence, but also personal stories of how the HOA's draconian measures had disrupted their lives. One young mother tearfully recounted how her children were forbidden from hosting small backyard gatherings, while an elderly man lamented losing his prized garden over a trivial violation. These heartfelt accounts deepened our collective resolve. The incident with Michael's grilling was now seen as part of a larger pattern, a systematic campaign of fear and control. The HOA's petty rules were being used as a tool to extract money and stifle community spirit, and the personal toll was evident in every story shared. As I compiled our growing dossier into a unified report, I realized that our battle was not only about reclaiming a right to grill, but about restoring a community's autonomy. Our alliances transcended age and background. Every resident, regardless of circumstance, had a stake in this fight. The network we built became the backbone of our resistance. With each piece of evidence, every testimony, and the unwavering solidarity of our neighbors, we were ready to challenge the board's authority and bring their corrupt practices to light. The turning point arrived when a group of residents, emboldened by our collective evidence, organized a peaceful protest right outside the HOA headquarters. Signs were held high, chants filled the air, and cameras captured every moment. The protest was a direct challenge to the board's authority, and soon the incident attracted local media attention. In the midst of the protest, I received an anonymous tip. A series of internal emails detailed plans for further crackdowns on outdoor gatherings, plans that would target anyone daring to defy the board's arbitrary rules. This was the final piece of evidence that confirmed the HOA's deliberate intent to stifle community life for profit and control. The protest quickly turned into a critical juncture. The media's presence forced the board into an impromptu press conference. where their rehearsed justifications began to crumble under the weight of our documented evidence. Neighbors shouted for justice, and the collective voice of the community demanded accountability. Faced with overwhelming public scrutiny and the prospect of legal repercussions, the HOA's defiant stance began to falter. The stage was now set for a decisive showdown, one that would not only reverse the wrongful arrest attempt, but also dismantle the board's long-standing grip on our neighborhood. At the next emergency HOA meeting, the tension reached its peak. In a packed community hall, the board members sat stiffly as I presented our evidence. Suddenly, Karen Marini, the same relentless enforcer, rose to her feet. With fury in her eyes, she bellowed, "How dare you defy our rules? Arrest him now for disturbing the peace." Her voice thundered through the room as she pointed directly at Michael. In that charged moment, Michael stepped forward. Clad in his police uniform, he remained utterly calm and composed. His deep, steady voice cut through the chaos. "I am Captain Michael Carter, and I have always served and protected this community. I will not be intimidated by arbitrary orders or petty rules." His words resonated like a rallying cry. Karen's face contorted in anger as she ranted, "You think your badge makes you above the law? This isn't about grilling, it's about enforcing community standards." But Michael's calm defiance was unshaken. The residents, now emboldened by his courage, began to murmur in support. The tension in the room was electric as Karen continued to shout, her frustration mounting, while Michael maintained a stoic silence. His unflinching gaze and unwavering tone conveyed a message louder than words. No one, not even an overreaching HOA, could undermine the law when it was embodied by someone who truly understood it. The confrontation marked a turning point. Karen's rage clashed with Michael's resolute calm, and in that moment, it was clear that justice was on our side. As the heated exchange subsided, the atmosphere in the hall reached a fever pitch. The residents, now fully awakened to the injustice they had endured, began to demand concrete action. With every eye fixed on the crumbling authority of the HOA board, I unveiled the final piece of evidence: internal documents that revealed how the board's petty rules were orchestrated solely to generate revenue and intimidate dissent. A hush fell over the room as I spoke. This isn't just about a backyard grill. It's about an abuse of power that affects every one of us. The shock in the room was palpable. Even Karen's furious outbursts had given way to stunned silence as the undeniable proof was laid out before them. The community's support reached a crescendo. Several key residents stood up, demanding that the board be held accountable. The unity was overwhelming, and the board's earlier confidence had vanished. With the threat of legal action and media scrutiny looming large, the board began to waver. In that charged moment, the balance of power shifted irrevocably. The collective resolve of the community, bolstered by Michael's dignified stand, set the stage for the final showdown. Every heart in that room beat in unison, ready to see justice prevail. The day of reckoning arrived in a packed community center, where residents, local media, and even a few city officials had gathered. With the full dossier of evidence displayed on a projector screen, I took center stage. My voice was firm and unwavering as I detailed every instance of HOA overreach, the fabricated regulations, the arbitrary fines, and the personal injustice inflicted upon my brother. Then came the defining moment. I said, "Today, justice is not a matter of interpretation, it's a matter of truth." At that precise moment, Michael stepped forward in full uniform, his badge shining as a symbol of legitimacy. His calm, authoritative presence silenced any lingering doubts. A federal inspector, alerted by the media frenzy, stepped into the room. "Based on the overwhelming evidence," he declared, "we are ordering an immediate audit of the HOA's practices and a halt to all further punitive actions." The room erupted in applause as Karen and the board were forced into silence. Karen, red-faced and stammering, tried to retort, "This is against our bylaws." But the inspector's words and Michael's unyielding stance rendered her argument moot. The police presence, coupled with the inspector's mandate, meant that the wrongful arrest order was null and void. In a dramatic twist, the board's plans crumbled before the eyes of an empowered community. Michael's 5 rights and his dignity were vindicated. As the room filled with cheers and relief, it became clear that no one was above the law, not even a tyrannical HOA. The tide had turned, and justice had finally prevailed. In the aftermath of that monumental showdown, Our community found itself reborn. The corrupt practices of the HOA were laid bare, and a new democratically elected board, one committed to fairness and transparency, was installed. Michael's rights were not only restored, but celebrated, serving as a powerful reminder that authority must always be accountable. Standing in our backyard, now a symbol of our collective victory, I watched as neighbors exchanged relieved smiles and renewed hopes. Michael, ever the stoic hero, returned to his grilling with a quiet dignity that spoke volumes. His calm in the face of injustice had not only saved him from an undeserved arrest, but had inspired an entire community to stand up for what was right. Reflecting on the journey, I realized that this battle was about much more than a simple violation over a grill. It was about defending our freedom and our right to enjoy our homes without fear of arbitrary power. It was a testament to the strength of unity, the importance of transparency, and the enduring spirit of justice. If this story has inspired you to stand up against injustice, please show your support by hitting the like button, subscribing to the channel, and turning on notifications for more eye-opening tales of resistance. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do if your rights were trampled by a system designed to control you? And don't miss our next video, where more secrets and triumphs await. Remember, every challenge can be overcome when we stand united. Subscribe now and join the movement for truth and justice.